For liftoff. Now, the Cosmos SkyMed satellite continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team still tracking that the range with the Coast Guard with that cruise liner in the no-go zone. If for that reason we do not launch today,
the cruise ship on your screen is not the one that's the problem. Just
but weather is still
FYI.
looking amazing over there.
But maybe it is.
We're proceeding into the last couple minutes of
That's a nice looking cruise ship. I wonder where it's heading.
Ooh, a rocket. Let me go look.
There's that call out that stage 2 LOX loading is now complete on the second stage. That completes loading for both first and second stage. Now you can see some venting there on your screen. That is the clearing of that's the clearing of the LOX line.
Well, surely this can't cause any issues.
It's just a cruise ship. It's a little boat.
And around T minus 1 minute, Falcon 9 will take over the launch countdown. And the flight computers will begin to execute stored programs to prepare the vehicle for flight.
As always, here on the launch pad, let's see a go, no go in the chat. If you're a member of the channel, you can use one of those new emojis there. T minus 1 minute and counting until liftoff.
We have Falcon 9 in startup.
Maybe they shouldn't have done that.
It's fine. Look, they're leaving the frame. They're going on their way. The rocket's about to launch. We're all good.
It's fine. It's going up. The boat's going sideways.
Oh, the rocket's not about to launch.
Oh, well, maybe not. The cruise ship. Well, if you weren't live with us earlier this week, welcome here to the Launch Pod episode 004. That was a replay of the cruise ship that Discord seems to love so much, scrubbing a Falcon 9 flight. If it's your first time here, welcome. This is our weekly show here on the Launch Pad called the Launch Pod. And as always, I'm joined by Ian. How's it going?
Hey, it's going pretty good here on land.
On land. That's the way it's going. If you guys are first time here, take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from, and if it's your first time tuning in live. If you're watching the replay, let us know in the comments by typing replay. Love to see who's checking us out after. Here on our weekly episode, we talk about everything that's happened in the last week of space, some of the launches you can look forward to coming up in the week ahead, and then the second half of the show, we take your guys' live comments, questions, topics, and theories. But if you guys want to, you can derail the show by sending in a super chat with a question or a comment while we're going through the things that have happened this week, and that will help direct the way the show is going. We've got about 10 or 12 topics that we wanted to go over this week of things that are happening, and then we'll get to your guys' live comments and questions. But first off the top is something that has made the last few hours very fun for the entire space community. We ended up getting a tweet from Elon, which isn't necessarily an abnormal thing, but what was in it was something we were not expecting to hear about today, which is that next Thursday at 8 p.m., there is going to be a Starship update. We don't know where, we don't know about how, but next week at 8 p.m., Elon responded to Sireni Ati, and there's going to be an update. So we're hoping to know more information hopefully soon. We're talking about how we're going to be able to handle this, and we'll go from there. So make sure you stay tuned on our Twitter and in our Discord to follow along with what next week might look like as we count down towards this. And continuing through his thread of everybody panicking that, oh my goodness, there's a Starship update, he's also confirmed there's going to be a fully stacked Starship at that. So that means sometime in the next 6 days, they are going to have to stack the booster back onto the orbital pad and stack Starship. So lots of activity happening. Ian, I know this came out just a couple of hours ago. What were your first thoughts when you heard it?
Yeah, first thought was really just, Thursday, 8 p.m. That sounds like we might have some conflict there. And yeah, right now it's Thursday at 8 p.m. That is when we usually have the Launch Pod show. So as Zach mentioned, we are trying to see what we can do. No more details on that yet, but we will either way get you some form of coverage. No idea what's going to happen, but being able to see everything fully stacked once again is going to be phenomenal. maybe they'll do something a cool like light show or to kind of showcase it and give us some better views. But I'm very pumped to see some more concrete information come out. Maybe they're going to say something about the timeline. I know it's still delayed by the FAA a bit, but it's been about 27 months since we've had one of these presentations before. So any form of it, I'm just pretty excited for. And yeah, I actually saw it before you did. So the first thing I thought was like, oh, I have to send this to Zach. Let's see what's gonna go happen. And then right followed up to that was that he mentioned that they were going to do the stacking. So nothing official yet. We'll keep our eyes out whether it's going to be an official announcement or it's just going to follow up with some more Elon reply tweets. We don't know. But yeah, we'll give you guys some coverage in some form. So do stay tuned.
I'm wondering if he's going to pull a Peter Beck and do it like the Rocket Lab one, where, because I feel like they could film a really epic video. I mean, we've seen some of those hype videos that they've done that have been incredible. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. And of course, it's Elon. So is it actually Thursday next week at 8? We'll wait and find out.
Well, did he say Thursday next week, or did he say Thursday at 8? Because
Thursday next week at 8.
Okay.
So he did say
no
next
wiggle room
week.
there.
So yeah, no wiggle room there. And he said Texas time, which I'd like to point out. Texas does have 2 time zones, depending on where you are in the state. I don't know where those timeline is, but I know there are 2 time zones in Texas. So
yeah, so Boca Chica should still be in Central Time. So that's why I said it was our show. This is my time zone. Ooh.
It's okay. We're just a little bit further over here.
Yeah, but so yeah, we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. Moving on from SpaceX, though, normally we always have a SpaceX segment. They're going to be a little bit shorter this time. Going on to Axiom Space, a company we don't talk about too much, but they did something really cool, taking control of the International Space Station for the first time. Now, this wasn't for very long. It was just to prove to NASA that they had the capability to do that in the event that they needed to, also for cargo resupply missions, and attached to what we're going to talk about next. But I think this is the first time that a private company has fully taken control of the ISS. So a big milestone for them, and comes hot on the heels of their next big announcement that they made a few days later. They announced their first crew. So all this is kind of tied together. It's 4 guys. Let me see if I can pull up their names very quickly.
Michael, Larry, Mark, and Etienne? I'm sorry if I said that wrong.
Yeah, Michael, Larry, Mark, Etienne. Yeah, I'm right with you. I don't know, but yeah, one of them a former NASA astronaut, so definitely has some flight experience. But this is very cool. They are going to be in the ISS for, I think it was just about a week, 10 days in orbit. They're going to splash down in Florida, and they are launching March 30th. So that's actually not too far away. I don't know if we're going to try and make it. We haven't talked about that yet, but either way, we'll provide coverage. It'll be launching from Launch Complex 39A. So that's going to be a very exciting thing to look out for. What do you think, Zach, on the future of Axiom? I feel like I've heard for the past year, they've talked a lot of talk, and of course they've been doing things, but now they're actually physically doing things. So it's pretty exciting to see.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That I'm just glad that they're actually doing something. We know of Axiom Station. We know of the Axiom AX 1, 2, 3, and 4 missions. Originally 2 were Crew Dragon, 2 were Starliner. They're now all Crew Dragon for now because no one can trust Starliner. But now they're actually doing something. And we've known that these 4 were interested in going. But the fact that they are now, I believe they said, approved by NASA to go, which is a big milestone because not only do you have to be approved by NASA to be able to go on a mission like this, to dock with the International Space Station, you actually have to be accepted by all the partner nations. So there's all the nations that have helped build the ISS have to say, yes, they can board, which is something we really didn't see or have to worry about in the past. But now with all these private missions spooling up, we're having to see more often these, I don't want to say regular people because obviously they're buying a mission to space. That's not a regular thing to do just yet. But these people that are not always fully trained NASA astronauts now going through their training and preparations for their mission. I'm excited to see what they do on board, like Inspiration 4 and like with MZ when he went to the station. I'm very interested to see the variety of content that we get. Inspiration 4, we only had a couple events. MZ was literally vlogging from the space station every day. So I'm interested to see what these 4 business professionals are going to end up doing with their time on station. But it's glad to finally have a launch date. It means we are expecting in middle of April Crew 4 launch, and then at Crew 4 will be the ones actually welcoming the AX-1 crew on board the station. And I believe we might see even a Soyuz crew swap before the AX-1 crew get there as well. So lots of activity up at the space station.
Yeah, you had mentioned that they've been training. Actually, we now know that they've been training since August. So it's not that they're just jumping in now, even though they've just been announced now. I guess it was kind of done in secrecy. But as far as we know from the NASA blog that we've been given, they're going to be spending those 10 days doing a lot of scientific research, whether it's going to be on themselves or helping out with the ISS crew. That's not something that we know right now, but it does seem like they'll be busy. Given the makeup, for lack of better words, of the crew, I don't know if they're going to be too media savvy. So I'm not expecting maybe too many vlog style things or things like Inspiration 4 did, but definitely hoping to see some cool videos or some cool photos. And hopefully they don't spend the entire time just working, because my favorite part now of these new private citizen missions are the fact that they can take that time out to showcase what it's like just to be on the International Space Station, and not just the work that's involved, but the kind of the cool factor of space. When you're trying to get people really saying, why should we do this? What's the point? Sort of things like that, to showcase both sides. It feels like it's a more human touch, and I really enjoy seeing that aspect. And that's something that now that we are sending not paid astronauts to space and beyond, that's something we're starting to see more and more. Sorry, I just realized I kind of stepped on.
You're good. You're totally good. What's going on with James Webb?
Yeah, every week we got something cool going on with James Webb. Which, first of all, I want to mention, if there is any place where you go to get your daily James Webb fix, Zach, where would that be?
I'll be right here on the launch pad. We
It
got our
would be.
we got our 24/7 James Webb tracker. It's gonna be up for at least another 40 days. But it looks like NASA, from the information we've been getting, is going to keep sending out telemetry for us all the way through this cool down sequence. So we're gonna be staying live with that as long as we can, as long as we have telemetry and data to bring out to you guys. They did do an update a couple of days ago bringing out a bunch more temperature data. So if you haven't checked it out in a few days since it reached L2, after this stream, head on over, check it out. A lot more data on the temperatures of it, and anytime there's any updating press conferences or anything, we'll patch that in for you guys as well.
Yeah, temperature data, there is a lot of it. So if you like numbers, definitely feel free to reach out to there. But speaking on Webb, they now have their high gain antenna out, which means that it is able to send a vast amount more data than it was previously after it had launched. And that is going to help serve its purpose with trying to take all those mirrors and align everything perfectly. And then whenever it is ready to send photos, it can send those photos at a pretty high bit rate. It had started aligning already on star HD 84406, lovely name. Essentially just a bright star that is kind of secluded from everything else, so it's not going to have a lot of interference with nearby light. And taking each of those 18 mirrors and trying to slowly point it to get everything to be at the same angle, so the picture it receives has no distortion and is merely uniform. And we are now actually starting that process. As you can see on screen, this is a simulation of kind of what we expected it to look like. Of course, we're not pulling those actual images right now, but it is aligning itself, and there is that first light hitting the actual detectors of James Webb. So this process is going to take a few months, and you can kind of see on screen there's multiple different steps that it goes through. It's not as easy as just trying to get everything focused to one point. So first it will do the segment alignment, actually the image identification. This is where we're at now, where it just identifies, we can see all 18 points, we're good. Then it starts to slowly align those points. Once they're all properly aligned, it will stack all of those points, because it is 18 different mirrors. So you are going to see 18 different types of images, and you have to put them together if you want to get one image properly. And then from there, it'll do phasing to make sure everything is properly aligned with the wavelength of light. These mirrors are, and the motors attached to them are so fine-tuned that you have to get at that exact fraction of a wavelength, because if one mirror is off, you will have some light subtracting with some other light, and then you will get a different image. And that might not matter visually, but when you're trying to extract measurements from the data, which is really what they do. Of course, we like to just look at the cool photos and we think of the photos of it, but there's a lot of scientific research to be done with this data. It needs to be accurate, so that phasing is important. It does it through coarse phasing and then through fine phasing to really get everything perfectly in tune so that those images are then ready to start sending out. And then lastly, they align the instrument with its proper field of view, and that just makes sure that it can see exactly what it's meant to see at every given point. So whenever we steer it properly, we know what we're seeing. And then they just iterate that until everything's all done. So very simple, quick process. But yeah, we're actually starting it, that process of getting those images. Of course, we still expect to see them sometime in May or June. So though I just joked, it is not actually a simple and quick process, but we're getting there. What do you think about this, Zach? We've been talking about it going to places. It finally got to where it needed to go to, and then it deployed its mirrors. But now it's doing stuff. It's starting to do the actual alignment phase and data processing phase. It's a very cool step to see.
Yeah, I really appreciate this image that they released that I think could have come maybe a little sooner. The first one showing how they get all these dots, but then that all those dots are actually the same thing. And really just show the process of, one at a time, bringing them together. Because I think a lot of people are confused about how that necessarily works, because they've talked so much that James Webb is one mirror once it's together. But it actually isn't. It's 18 mirrors that are just so tight it kind of almost looks like one mirror. So just clarifying a few things, really breaking down the process of it. I love that they're being really transparent about what their process is, but that we aren't going to see any of these photos until they have their first wow photo. And that's what they said they're waiting for, is they want a wow photo to be the first one that comes out of James Webb. They'll have a press conference for that, but they have confirmed that the day that happens, every technical photo will drop from this process. So we are going to get to see what these early photos were like in the process. So I'm excited to see, some maybe people doing animations of what we started, how we got to it, and then wow photo or something. But I appreciate that they're trying to be transparent and still give updates, because they really don't have to be. This is a massive project between 3 major space agencies. But I think they're realizing that the people are really interested and that they want to know more. So they're trying to keep that out for people.
Yeah. Speaking of transparency, we had mentioned previously in the last episode, for those of you that are active listeners, would you guys like to hear more about China? And we did hear a pretty overwhelming yes. And lo and behold, China actually dropped a white paper about their future plans going into this new 2022 up to, I don't know what the exact time frame was, but what they plan on doing. And if you know China in general, and also their space agency information, they really don't give much. And that's why we don't really live stream their launches, even though they do have pretty frequent launches. There's just not anything there. But essentially, it's the standard things, and we have it displayed on the screen now if you want to go ahead and take a closer look. They're essentially saying that they want to be a little bit more open going into the future, that they intend on increasing their payload capacity, increasing the amount of satellites that they put over for various purposes, not just scientific, but also cultural. They had even had a little blurb talking about how they wanted to increase the amount of 4K TV stations that they beam out to all their citizens. They don't want to have any threat in space. They want to be peaceful, that they want to send things to other planets. They want to cooperate. Very different type of message than they've been giving out, or rather that they have not been giving out for quite a while now. I hope that this means going forward, they can maybe showcase a little bit more in real time of what they're doing, rather than just kind of write about it later on, because it's always good to know that information, but as you guys are probably major fans of, seeing that in live time does give it a different dimension that you otherwise wouldn't get reading this white paper or whatever article is released afterwards. But
I find this
yeah, a
such
lot
an
of
interesting spot here. I'm going to interrupt you because I find
sure.
this really funny. Total launch attempts was 400, but they only had 207 that were completed by 183 long march. What happened to the other 193? That's a lot of rockets.
You don't need to know what happened to the others.
That's a lot of. That's more than all Falcon 9s ever have launched. Like that's a big number, but I appreciate that they're starting to do some transparency. This is a very long white paper, so definitely if you want to check it out, you can head on over to the cnsa.gov.cn channel or website and read through it. But it's a fun read.
Yeah, it's a little dense. There's definitely some interesting nuggets in there. I think so. Talking about what you had mentioned a second ago, they're pretty good now at their rockets, but that number I think was quoted back at 2017. Even that long ago, they weren't that great, and a lot of the rockets failed going up. But then they also have this really bad issue, and it's to do with the reliability of the early rockets, but then also the safety planning, or rather lack of safety planning, where the rockets would fail or work successfully either way, but major parts of the rockets, instead of falling into a controlled safety zone, would fall over whatever random swath of land it happened to be on, or even in some cases over homes and cities. And that's because they don't, unlike us. So I think most of all of our rocket launches are done on the coast, and that's done for a reason. They want to do it over water, so that in the case anything happens, it can fall into the ocean, and then the likelihood that it hits somebody is a lot smaller. I think China does have some coastal launching facilities, but a lot of them are actually just in the middle of the country. So I'm glad that the reliability of the rockets does seem to be going up. It's never a good thing for rockets to fall on people. It always has the potential to hurt. But yeah, they're definitely getting a lot better, and I like this new side of transparency. We'll see where it goes over time.
Yeah, it's definitely something that is new from the China perspective to have some transparency. And hey, maybe we'll actually get some cameras in the future. And I think a lot of it has to do with they want their moon station to be international. They don't want it to be just China and Russia. They do want other nations. And a number of nations that are actually already part of the Artemis program have expressed interest. I believe I saw that Luxembourg and a few others were interested. So I'm interested to see how those conflicts go, because the Artemis Accords make different rulings than probably what China's going to accept. But it's a start, and maybe we're going to start seeing a new version of the China space race, which I would hope to see, because it'd be nice to not see a war type thing come over the south side of the moon. But with that, NASA is getting ready to do their Artemis 1 mission. And we finally had an update from NASA a couple days ago. If you guys want to go back, we were live for that and on the teleconference. Didn't get to ask a question, but we'll always keep trying. But we were on that media call with the team from the Artemis program, talking about how the rollout and wet dress rehearsal of the first ever SLS for Artemis 1 is being delayed, and that it'll occur now most likely in early March, they're hoping. We heard the date March 8th being floated around. Originally, they were targeting the 15th of February. So they're definitely getting ready. They had a few things they wanted to finish up on the rocket before they roll it out for a full wet dress rehearsal on pad 39B, which will be the first time we've seen a rocket out on 39B in many, many years. So we're all excited to see SLS finally leave that VAB fully stacked and stop looking at photo renders and start looking at real photos of what SLS looks like out on a pad. They gave a few nuggets of information about just how much time they'll need between a wet dress and an actual launch, saying a minimum of 2 weeks for sure. But if things they want to check other things out, they will take that time. And they may possibly even roll SLS back off the pad after the wet dress, just to make sure they can go over everything, make sure everything's safe, roll it back out, and prepare for that actual Artemis 1 launch, which I want to make sure we've got at least some people there for that. And I'm hoping to be there in person to see the first ever SLS liftoff. So you guys can, of course, watch that here. Not too sure how we're going to cover the rollout. We're waiting to hear from NASA if we can get on. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Check back on the channel every few days. We pre-schedule all of our launches and stuff if we have notice. And that's a great way to do it. Or hang out in the Discord. We talk about things like that. But excited to see SLS get ready to roll out to the pad. Yeah, just actually Artemis 1 happened.
I was poised to bring it up anyway, that we had talked about possibly being an issue was the shelf life of those solid rocket boosters. They are finite, so at some point, if we keep pushing it back, they will have to deal with that. Zach, maybe let us in a little bit more. I know you said that we were live, so anybody that watched would have known, but what did they say in regards to that? Because they did talk about it.
We'll figure it out. That's basically what they said, if you boiled it down to NASA talk. A journalist did call it out, saying, hey, these boosters were stacked now a year ago. They used to only have a 12-month shelf life. We're coming up to that. We've now passed that. Then a few months ago, they said, oh, we'll extend it to 18 months. That only gets us to July. They're now targeting April to May for liftoff. You know, if something goes wrong with the wet dress or there's weather or something, what's going to happen with that? So they have a deadline. Now there's questions, could they extend those boosters more? I think so, but I think people are already questioning their safety. So I hope they don't. Solid rocket boosters, you know, though used a lot with shuttle, are not perfect, and they have that history, and people are wanting to make sure that we start this Artemis program in a sad connection, not the way like we started Apollo 1. So we want to make sure that they're doing it safely, and I think that's what they're doing. A lot of the stuff they didn't have answers for during the press conference or weren't ready to release. Obviously, a lot of questions about what the actual launch will look like, the mission, the follow-up, and things like that. And some things were investigations into some of the engine computer that they had to swap out and things like that. So a lot of stuff that they were still looking through, and hopefully we'll get some more updates. It sounded like they want to give more as they lead up to that. But yeah, everybody's kind of sitting and waiting. But hopefully we have a little bit more notice than the Starship event from NASA. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, well, I'm sure if they say anything, it'll probably be better than not even a tweet, a reply to a tweet. I don't know if we made that clear earlier, but yeah. So yeah, we're gonna get some more information about that soon. One of the things I was a little hopeful for was, I think the vibe that I got was there wasn't anything wrong. They were just making their checks to make sure everything was good. And most of those checks weren't even in regards to any operational component of the rocket. It was more so data intake and scientific instruments, because they said that this is going to be the most outfitted launch that they have ever had, meaning that they're going to take so much data, it is unbelievable. Which makes sense, because this is going to be the only uncrewed launch. So the next time that they have this thing stacked out and ready to go, it's going to the moon with people. They want to know everything about that rocket. So they can take their time. I am glad that they are going to get all of those instruments ready and double and triple checked, and hopefully everything should go well. Moving on, though, a little bit, Starlink Premium. Any of you guys heard about that? Any of you guys heard about Starlink? For those of you that are kind of unaware, I know that we live stream the launches a lot. So essentially, it's Elon Musk's and SpaceX's form of satellite internet, except it's much better, and it's been doing pretty good. I think at this point they're up to a few 100,000 subscribers, and of course they're looking to rapidly grow, which is one of the major drivers behind developing Starship, with their next generation Starlink being heavier and having more equipment on it. Starlink Premium is looking to take that and up it up a notch for the people that really need it. So it's going to have better weather resistance, although we're not told what that means exactly in typical Elon fashion, but it sounds pretty good. And it's going to have a much higher download and upload speed. So I think typical Starlink gets anywhere from 100 to 150 megabytes per second maximum, whereas Premium is aiming for about 350. So some pretty sizable bumps, but not just in the speed, we're also seeing a sizable price increase. So the regular Starlink, and this isn't on this webpage. I'm actually unsure exactly where news outlets got this information from, but I've seen it in quite a few places, so it has to be credible to some degree. The regular Starlink, which is still not available everywhere, and one of the perks of Starlink Premium is that you can take it absolutely anywhere. So there you go. Regular Starlink is $99, whereas Starlink Premium for the deposit. Starlink Premium is $500. And then when you get regular Starlink, you have to pay $500 for the equipment, whereas Starlink Premium is $2,500. All of these figures are in US dollars, by the way. Sorry to Zac's Canadian viewers. I don't know what that conversion rate is, but it's more money. And then per month, I think it is also $500 for Starlink Premium versus the $100 for regular Starlink. So quite a hefty price increase. Zac, what are your thoughts on, is it worth it? Is it something that they're, one of the things that they had talked about, Elon talked about previously, was they are selling the dishes right now for way less than it costs to make. Is this them trying to meet where they were supposed to be originally and then adding a little bit for premium, or is this them kind of overcharging for something for the people that really need that capability? What are your thoughts on this whole new tier of Starlink?
I want it, but not for that price. I've said for a while, talking to people about Starlink, that this is not an option for people in cities. It doesn't make sense to do Starlink right now if you have access to like fiber or something. But for people in rural to have this type of access at that speed is definitely something that is opening up an even larger sector than just regular Starlink did. I know people that were happy to get 10, 15 megabytes down with Starlink at the beginning, and now that the fact that they could, times that by multiples of 10 is something that is quite exciting for a lot of people. Definitely a bigger cost, not obviously for everybody, but I think for businesses and stuff that have a lot of people on the network, it would open up for that. Maybe if you're transmitting a lot of data, I think it'll be really great for on the road reporting for different things if they need to be able to output a lot of data. But I think it came out of the blue. I don't think any of us were expecting premium to be an option. I think we were just expecting Starlink to improve. So I'm hoping we don't see kind of a pattern that we're seeing with a lot of bigger tech companies, is that we have one level and then we bring out a premium and then we bring out a plus and then we have an ultra, because then it starts really segregating the market and breaking up people. Now, if you can afford it, great. I think just like normal Starlink, we'll see it come down, because if I remember correctly, the beta Starlinks I saw when we got the option to get into it was $1,000 for the dish at the beginning. So I'm wondering if this is just the fact that it's a new dish and a new system, and they're like, hey, if people want it, they're going to pay for it, and then maybe we'll see it come down. I know there are people out there, though, that have multiple regular Starlinks, so maybe this is a better option just to do one. Obviously, that $500 a month, I hope, comes down. I could see $250 being a great option for this, because I pay closer to the regular Starlink price and I get $1,500 down and just under $1,000 up. That's with fiber, but I'm in a city, so I think they've still got some room there that they need to adjust if they want to be a direct competitor, but they've got millions of people signed up. I know when Starlink first began rolling out beta, there was something like, it was like 50 or 60 million people in the US. If you did the calculation with a survey and expanded it over the population, said they wanted to have Starlink over any of their other options, even if it costs more. People were interested in it. They wanted to be on that newer sector. So we'll see what happens. Basic internet for $500, that's too much. But for some people, maybe it's what they need.
Yeah, I'm hoping, this is pure speculation at my point, as rocket companies try to be more reusable, if more people decide to land something on sea, they kind of take the SpaceX approach. And now that they have the premium Starlink to go off of, maybe they'll do it quite literally. And for those of you that aren't aware, I'm referring to the fact that there was a period in time where whenever SpaceX were landing one of their rockets on the recovery ships, they had a direct satellite link. And that's why anytime the rocket would get near the ship, it would just completely go down because it would start to shake the ship. And if it wasn't that direct link, it would go out. And then we'd get it kind of after a minute or two and things died down. And then they started to use Starlink. And now they don't have that issue anymore. And the streams, I mean, they do sometimes, but the streams generally are pretty good. And if you're unaware of that, do watch our live coverage because we show all of it. It's pretty great. But yeah, if more companies have access to not only regular Starlink, which I don't think you could just take in the middle of the ocean and have work, but this new premium tier where they specifically have as a selling point, you can take it anywhere. Maybe coverage like this will become more common, or if anything, higher quality coverage of this will become more common.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it rolls out for places like cafes and things like that. I think because definitely regular Starlink wouldn't have worked in that. Trying to think of people that would be spending that amount because business internet, at least up here in Canada, is ridiculous. More people will run off a personal internet plan than a business internet plan for their if they can because it's just way cheaper because they think the businesses should be able to pay for it. So lots to see as multiple buildings and different things keep expanding with SpaceX and especially with Starbase. Hopefully we'll see some more connectivity maybe available down there. Elon, public Wi-Fi at the launch site. Good idea.
That would be killer.
Just think, everyone's there. Don't you want it? You put a little backdrop up, maybe one of those Instagram things. You just get more support for Starbase than you already have. If you've already driven out to Starbase, you know people are going to support it. It's a long drive, so we'll see what happens. But shifting back to looking at Kennedy, where we see a lot of the launches of Starlink, and with the Falcon 9, if you have kind of followed along where we were talking last couple episodes ago about where Falcon 9s are, we talked about how Kennedy's getting ready to have their own Falcon 9 installed for viewing. There's one currently at Houston and, of course, one at SpaceX Mission Control. But the Gateway building at Kennedy Space Center is preparing to be open. When I was down there in September, it did not look this beautiful. It was still very much a construction site, but it was quite a bit larger than I thought it was going to be, showing the original renders. And now there's even here, this happened a little bit after I was down there in September, on that booster 1023, which was one of the side boosters of a Falcon Heavy mission. We don't want the audio. Actually did arrive. This is what it looked like when I was there, the outside of the building. But the booster was rolled up and into the new Gateway facility, smack at the really beginning of the visitor center. You can see this here. We'll jump to where it actually comes in. But they were very excited to have a Falcon 9 pull into the visitor center parking lot and get brought into the actual building. It literally just fits through the door. And this was really our first look inside the Gateway Center. We hadn't seen many renders of what it would be like inside. They were kind of keeping it a secret until they showed this Falcon 9 arriving. But the Gateway facility is going to be showcasing this next generation of space flight and space travel and what's going to be happening with it there. So it literally just fit into the door, but now they've also added more things into that building as they get ready and have released a few renderings of inside that they're actually going to be moving some of the capsules that are currently in the movie theater building into here. So they're going to have a Starliner capsule, looks like an Apollo capsule. They're going to have an SLS mock-up. We're expecting they're going to have the first cargo dragon, or one of the first cargo dragons, on display as well, with much bigger displays than they currently have. You've got the Falcon 9 across the roof, and then actually just a couple weeks ago, Dream Chaser from Sierra Space was delivered with one of their first ever full mock-up of the Dream Chaser vehicle, as well as the Shooting Star attachment, and that is going to be hung along with the Falcon 9 from the ceiling, which is going to just show two of these next generation vehicles that we're going to be seeing a lot more of in the years to come. But also there's more things that are going to be happening in that facility. Kennedy's been adding these attractions over the years, that there's actually going to be a departure section where you will depart Kennedy Space Center virtually, and you will be able to go into these kind of boarding positions. And if you've ever been to Star Tours at Disney, what we're getting is it's going to sort of be like that. There's, of course, going to be food as well because it's Kennedy. But it's going to sort of be like that. You're going to be able to pick between a few different missions that you're going to be able to go off on in a kind of simulator experience. We don't know a whole lot more, but that is going to be in existence. And then the last photo that I skipped over here, we actually were just looking at this before the show, is that there's actually going to be an observatory on the rooftop, which I'm really excited to see what comes out of there. But I wanted to draw a note to the screen and the people, because this is something we were actually talking about and hoping to ask during the Artemis 1 update is, where's the press going to go? Where's media or the public going to go? Because the Saturn V Center and the VAB and the current press site were all built at 3.2 miles or a little bit further to withstand the Saturn V's exclusion zone of 3 miles. But we've been told since the beginning that SLS is going to have a larger exclusion zone, and probably not by just a couple hundred meters. So my theory, and I'm not sure what Ian, your kind of thoughts are on this, is that we might actually be looking at what will be one of the new press sites, or possibly one of the new visiting sites where you have to buy a really exclusive ticket. Because right now, if you're invited media on a short list, you can actually set up cameras and be on top of the VAB for some launches. Most press just go to the regular press site. Based on how many people are on that roof, that's not all the press. We know that. So I'm thinking the fact that there's a countdown clock, it's on a building, it's going to have a clear shot of any pad at Kennedy or Cape Canaveral. It could be pretty great. And I'm wondering, is this an observatory, or is this a really, really good launch camera to be able to track SLS during its flights? So lots of things coming to the Gateway, lots of questions, but it looks like it's going to be an advancement. And having done Kennedy, it's definitely something that if you do every movie or an exhibit, it takes a couple, you could take a couple days. But if you go more just the actual history side of it and not necessarily all the IMAX and stuff, it's a day. And I'm excited to see them adding more that's going to help expand it to be a multi-day attraction. But what are your thoughts seeing these new renders?
Yeah, so quite a few questions you voiced at me there. So I remember back during Inspiration 4 when I went to Kennedy, that was the first time I had ever been. Of course, I loved it. I mean, there's a lot of really great stuff there. I was slightly disappointed, though. Everything that was there, with the exception of maybe the little new Mars section they had, really felt dated. So having this new building dedicated specifically to the future of spaceflight and more so to deep space, and even having something like a flown Falcon 9 kind of sitting there, I think it's going to reinvigorate where space is now versus this is what NASA has been for a while. So I'm really excited to see it. I don't know. You had mentioned is that observatory really just a stealthy tracking camera? I don't think so. The astronomer of me just really hopes it's an observatory. I think that would be pretty cool. But either way, I had never thought about that. That would be pretty interesting. I would think if they were to do that, they'd probably have it at a closer location because it could all be done remote. So I probably lean more towards it being an observatory, especially with the whole deep space theme. Maybe they want to have it at night be used for seeing the planets, because that's something that's pretty easy to do, even in a kind of light polluted area, kind of like outside of Orlando where it is. But yeah, I'm very excited. I'm still a little salty, and we had talked about this on a previous live stream too. Gabe had seen it coming into the building as it was going across into the facility. I'm tongue-tied. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway,
his bus got detoured by it driving down the road. They had to pull over, and he was maybe like 6 feet, 8 feet, with a window in between him and it. So one day we'll get that close.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I think I sent you a photo or sent somebody. I saw the transporter coming back. I didn't get to see it actually going towards it, though. So whenever it opens up to be able to actually see that for the first time. I've seen a first stage before. It was when I went to Hawthorne, but I only saw it very briefly, and that was years ago. So to be able to see it again, and a flown one, I think would be very cool, too. So I'm all here for it. and they said it's opening up in the spring. So maybe by the time we go for SLS or something like that, it'll be kind of there. Hopefully early spring, not late spring. But kind of speaking on the future of NASA and what they plan to do. Of course, this isn't NASA exclusive, but have you guys heard? We're killing the ISS. If
We're gonna blow it up
yeah,
with
so
the Earth.
we've talked about this before on previous live streams and then also previous videos. But if you're unaware, we just recently renewed and pushed back the lifespan of the International Space Station up to 2030. But it does have a lifespan, and we can't keep doing that forever. So the current plan is by 2031 to crash it into Earth. And this week we have finally seen NASA give a little bit more detail to that. That's why the story is coming back, whereas we've talked about it before. They're going to land on a Point Nemo, which, for those of you unfamiliar, is the point that is farthest away from any land. It's kind of in the southern hemisphere in the middle of nowhere. And they said that they are going to just very slowly bring it down in altitude until it starts to hit atmosphere and then crash it into that point. This isn't the first time that we have put things into Point Nemo. You can see on the screen that the Mir space station was also crash landed there. And there have been plenty of other rockets and satellites and things that have been crashed there before. So this isn't new, but the International Space Station is pretty large. So it is definitely going to be a nice show to watch. But we have about a decade until that happens. So until then, we're definitely going to keep sending those crewed missions there and covering everything that's happening. But yeah, I mean, it feels a lot more official now, right, Zach? Like, we've known that it's going to be decommissioned. It is an aging vehicle, and it's in space, so its integrity over time just slowly gets worse and worse. It can't be there forever, but now we do have some more details on how we're actually going to deorbit and take it down. So what do you think about that?
I'm sad. The ISS has been like the thing that I've just grown up with. So the fact that we're talking about it disappearing, that was not something really ever on my radar until, a few years ago. Originally, it was going to expire 2017, then it was 2021, then it was 2025, and then just a couple weeks ago, the Biden-Harris administration officially extending it until 2030, and a lot of people are saying, well, it could be extended again. Not really. A lot of the habitat modules that are on the U.S. side and some of the early Russian ones will be hitting their expiration dates at that point. They're already being kind of pushed to their boundaries. So there's questions on, are there parts that can be saved? Absolutely. There might be a few modules from the Russian section that we see depart. And if you want to know more about kind of the whole plan and the timelines and everything, you can head back over to the channel. Look for this video here. NASA releases ISS Deorbit Plans. We actually talked about it about 2 months ago when it was deorbiting starting in 2026. Was the original plan at that point, as it was not renewed yet. Then they renewed it for 2030. But one of the interesting parts is, even though it's going to, at that point, it was going to expire 2026, 2028, they'd empty it, slowly start to bring it down. By 2030 would burn up. Now we're going to station it till 2030, which means we're going to deorbit it 2031, 23. But it is a multi-year process from what they had laid out before on just bringing it down, as you said, slowly into that safe point. I love that on this graphic from NASA, they make a point that, they're 2,700 kilometers from the closest land point from Point Nemo, but it's not going to show here. But the ISS is actually only 400 kilometers above it. So you're going a multiple of how high the station is from how far away it is from people. It's going to keep it safe, and it's where we already throw stuff currently. It's a designated point. That way we're not super impacting random spots throughout the ocean. So though it will be sad to see the ISS eventually go, it also means, though, by the time we see it go, we're going to see 2 to 6 new space stations already be in existence. And, it's going to be that old station that, maybe we won't be sad to see go, because we're going to see, newer, larger cupolas and windows and accessibility. So kind of bittersweet. It's bittersweet seeing NASA really actually address it and release more documentation on where they were going to throw it. They really didn't need to release it now. As you said, we've got a decade. So we'll see what other info they decide to share. But we got a decade. Let's enjoy it. It means we got a bunch more crew launches to it. And by the time we say goodbye to that, hopefully we will have people on Mars. So that's where I'm focusing.
Yeah, and you kind of pointed on the fact that by the time this happens, we're going to see hopefully 2 to 5 different space stations to some degree that are going to be up there. And I think that's what makes it a little bit better for me. All this time that we've been talking about deorbiting the ISS is kind of in the reference frame, at least for me personally, of right now, the only thing up there is the ISS. Well, and China's space station too, but that's small in beginning. I think once we get into this period within the next few years, specifically as companies like Axiom really build out their space infrastructure, it'll become easier to accept. And then by the time it's actually time to happen, it'll almost be like we all recognize that it's really time to happen because we have better, newer things out there. So I think releasing this information also gives more of a push to these companies and these other entities that already have a drive to put their infrastructures into space. Hopefully that kind of speeds it along and we can just all recognize that a little bit more.
Absolutely. But I think that was really the main topics of stuff that happened this week. Obviously, there were the Falcon 9 launches that we saw of the 3 different missions. Finally, Starlink 4-7 got off the ground, and ROL 87, as well as CRS-2. And now that we've seen 6 launches from SpaceX in a matter of basically a month, we're going to have a little bit of a gap until we see more Falcon 9s out on pads, but there are still launches you guys can look forward to in the next couple of weeks. We've got maybe a Soyuz tomorrow. We're waiting for Roscosmos to confirm that. We're looking forward to Astra, hopefully on Saturday. We've got a Soyuz OneWeb mission from the French Guiana on February 10th, followed by an Electron, hopefully on the 14th, as well as India attempting a launch on the 14th, and we're hoping we may be able to cover that. And then Soyuz sending up Progress MS-19 up to the International Space Station on the 15th, and then we've got some more, another Astra, another Cygnus and stuff as we continue through the month. So lots of stuff still happening. The next Falcon 9 we're not expecting until pretty much the very last couple days of February. So we'll wait to see how that occurs, and we'll go from there. But as always, we always say we're going to leave the second half of the show for you guys. So now it's your turn to be part of the show. Take a moment, send in any questions, comments, thoughts of stuff we talked about. We can pull back stuff up if you need us to clarify it. The best way to do that is tag us at the Launchpad in your comment. That'll flag it on our end so we can go through all of those questions. It's free to do so. If you want to butt in line and be the next one we answer, you can send it in as a super chat, but it's also a great way to help support what we do. But I see we've got some questions already coming in, so we're going to get those going. And the first one's coming in from Folded Eagle. Will they include a flight termination device for the crewed Starship missions? What do you think, Ian?
I mean, they haven't talked about it, but I know that there is no emergency termination system that's built in for Starship so far, and I think Elon said that he didn't plan on it. Never been a big fan of that idea, so if there was any form of emergency termination, I don't know what that would even look like, but I am sure that there probably has to be something that is built. I don't think NASA would allow their astronauts to fly on something that was kind of a strap and go regardless of what happens vehicle. So yeah, I would say I would hope so, but as of right now, we've gotten an indication almost of the opposite. So who knows, in all honesty.
Yeah, I'm curious to see kind of how they progress with that, because we do have one on the Falcon 9, but we also have that emergency separation. So like if the booster's going really wrong, they can separate the crew and go. There's a lot of questions. Could they do that with the top half of Starship? I think they really want to see how these first few test flights go, and then they'll be able to kind of determine maybe what they actually need. And I think you made a good point, is NASA wants to have crews on these missions. But one thing we're seeing is the HLS lunar lander that they're eventually going to be launching, that I did not plan, that I still have here, will not be launching with crew on it. It's going to be launching to orbit, going to the moon, and then the Orion crews will dock with either it or the Lunar Gateway Station and go to it. So the booster of Starship does not need to be human rated by NASA or the US government, and this only needs to be human rated for launches and landings off the moon, which theoretically are easier than getting off of the Earth, and this is never re-entering. The crew will go back into Orion and return. So I think off the bat, it might not be something as concerning. And then from that, most of the missions we're going to see to Mars with Starship, at least in the beginning, are going to be SpaceX missions, which means they kind of can say to NASA, we don't care what you think. They can certify their own astronauts, put in a waiver that you understand that there is no emergency escape, and go from there. So it's an interesting time where NASA, though still will have say, won't have say over everything. Like this AX-1 mission is a SpaceX mission, though they are doing some NASA training because of the space station. Inspiration 4 was the first time there was no NASA training. It was entirely SpaceX trained. So we're going to see more of that coming, and that means SpaceX can make its own decisions. But stay tuned, Folded Eagle. Hopefully we'll know more.
We've got another one from Folded Eagle, actually. Do you see any delays to Crew Dragon given the recent fourth parachute slow deployment issues? I don't think so. So Zach and I were talking about this the other day. I think that they can have up to 2 parachutes not work properly and still land safely. It'll be a little hard, but they can do it. So I think the fact that it's now been reoccurring, there's definitely going to be a NASA investigation into it, and it's something that they have to address. But I don't know if it's going to be severe enough for them to delay it. And Zach was saying earlier, and I kind of agree, hopefully it's something as simple as just a folding issue, where it wouldn't have to be any sort of a redesign. It would just be a different setup. But who knows? We haven't heard anything about any delays yet. If we do, of course, we'll relay it to you. But Zach, I know I kind of spoken for you there. Is kind of how you feel about that?
Knowing parachutes, if we boil it down to like skydiving, which obviously I've not done, I know from people that I've talked to that the folding is more critical than really anything else, to make sure it, and the fact that they did unfold. So they did deploy, and that's, I think, one thing that's also being kind of mislabeled even by NASA is the parachute did deploy. It came out. It didn't unreef. It didn't open with the others. So there is a difference there, which is why I'm thinking if it's folded wrong, maybe it's folded too tight. Even though the strings are trying to open, the fabric's too tight to open, and so the air's not getting in there and opening it until it's wiggled a lot in the air, and that's why we see it open. This last time, I think they said 72 seconds or so after the other 3, which, if you also think about how quickly they're coming down, that's a good chunk of time. But the cargo was never in danger. The crew was never in danger. But it is something that I know we were nervous watching with the Crew 3 mission, or Crew 2 coming home mission. I was like, there's a chute not deployed. I knew they were safe, but it's still that visual of a semi-failure of part of the recovery that gives a little bit of nervousness. So we'll wait and see what happens. They said they're doing an investigation. SpaceX doesn't seem worried, and I trust SpaceX. I haven't seen SpaceX do something dangerous with people. They put people's safety, I think, quite high, and I think Elon does as well. So if there's an issue, they would say, hey, we need to hold this and figure out an option. And then they would go from there. We got a question from Kevin Wise of how would Lightspeed travel rockets affect the crew and the people they leave behind? I feel like you could write a master's paper probably on that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be a rocket, at least a conventional rocket, because those are chemically powered. Theoretically, and I want to stress this, theoretically, you can take the space around you and displace your pocket of space faster, or not faster than, but at the speed of light. So you yourself are not traveling faster than the speed of light. You're just warping the space around you. That's the only way that I'm pretty sure we know of that could even again, theoretically be possible. If that were to be the case, it actually wouldn't affect people at all, because you wouldn't be. I guess yes, it would actually. There would still be time dilation. I don't know if there would be spatial dilation in the same way because it's not the object moving, it's really the entity of space around it moving. And for those of you that aren't aware, time dilation, um, essentially, the faster you go or slower you go relative to something else in space, you perceive time differently. So a good example of this would be if any of you had watched the movie Interstellar, when they go around a black hole. Well, actually, that was slightly different too. I'm ballooning here. If you go around an entity with a very high gravitational pull, it can do the same thing. But to keep it simple, both of those topics, if you go near high gravity or you go at very high speeds, you go through time differently. And actually, there is also a, gravitational pull. Or sorry, the you perceive lengths differently too. So if you go very fast, you will actually be kind of longer or shorter spatially than somebody that relative to you is stationary. So it does get a little complex, and that's why I'm tripping my words, because as I bring up a new topic, there's different kind of dimensions to that topic. But to get back to your point, um, it from the perception of the people in whatever spaceship you are referring to, they would see nothing different, but everything around them would look different. It would look either elongated, or it would look like it is moving through time much faster than they are, dependent on their speed. But like I said, that's all theoretical. And as of right now, we don't actually have a real method of even getting close to light speed. I think right now, Voyager 2 maybe is like the fastest thing that we have, and that's still a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of percent of light speed. So we've got a long way to go.
But we're working on it.
We are working
We're
on
working
it.
on it. I know there was one paper that came out, and it kind of circles around every couple of years, that there's someone that believes they have an idea of how, and they believe they've done it on an atomic level of making a warp bubble. But obviously, something that you can't fit between my fingers and see is not going to help moving a whole spaceship. So we got some ways to go, but the fact that we actually have some theories on maybe how we can do it, we'll see what happens. Star Trek coming into the real world.
Well, also, I'll burst the bubble a little bit more because you had talked about the scale that we think it's possible. We can roughly calculate the amount of energy that would be needed to even attempt something like that, and it's way more than we could ever have access to, unless we want to like deplete a sun to do one trip somewhere localized.
Let's do it.
Yeah, worth it.
It's worth it. We'll leave our sun alone, but we could go get another sun. There's lots of options. Richie's asking, how many years do you think it would take to set up a base on Mars to make fuel in order to return? I think a year, maybe 2, because I honestly think what's going to happen with it is what, like with Starship, with the cargo variations, we can build the refinery here. That it's in like IKEA pieces, that they just have to go and deploy it, or maybe the entire Starship's the refinery, and there's just stuff that has to be deployed to be able to pump the raw materials in. So there isn't a lot of setup to be able to do. Obviously, we don't have ground samples of Mars, so everything we're doing is based off theory and based off the rover data. The samples NASA's collecting won't actually be back at Earth until we've got humans on Mars, basically with SpaceX, if plans go to plan. But I don't think we're talking like a decade until people come home. I think we could see a first return mission home in 2 to 4 years. 2 being like, wow, how did we do this? But 4 being more realistic. But I think it also depends on just, how well that refinery process goes. We saw MOXIE worked, which is how they made oxygen on the surface, which eliminates one of kind of 3 major factors on how long we can stay on Mars and have the number of people living. I think we're going to see Starship-sized MOXIE factories, basically, that land and turn the Martian atmosphere into oxygen, which if they could find a way to do it once that ship lands, if it's never going to leave, there may be a way that they could actually convert one or both of the tanks of the Starship into holding tanks of the oxygen that the rest of the colony could then plug into or tap into for other tanks. Or so there's a lot of options, and again, it gets really sci-fi thinking of like, oh, let's just land and turn it on and we've got oxygen. But that's what they did with Moxie on the Perseverance rover, and it worked. It took an hour to make enough oxygen for astronauts to survive for 10 minutes. But you're talking, minutes? I thought it was 10 minutes, and it was the size of a Kleenex box.
Yeah, I know it was a few grams. I never heard a time estimate put to it, so I'm glad you said that, because I didn't know. Well, actually, the thing that I think may be harder is not doing the oxygen, but making the oxygen liquid, which is what would be needed to actually return, because that takes a lot of energy. And you can put solar panels on Mars, but then you're getting a much smaller return because Mars is going to be farther away. Granted, it has less atmosphere. I don't know how those numbers kind of like interact with each other, but yeah, I think that's probably where the bigger sticking point is going to be, is just how do you get enough energy to do it at the scale needed, not only to create the oxygen, but then make it liquid and keep it liquid, because both of those require ongoing energy, whereas making it into oxygen, once it's done. So a good question.
On Mars, First Lass is asking, would you personally go on a one-way trip? And I'm going to add on to that, or would you have to know you could come home eventually?
I would.
You go one way?
I would go one way, yeah. Well, I'll add a disclaimer to that. It depends on when and under what circumstances. So if I were one of the first group of astronauts to go, yeah, I'd go one way. If we had a Mars colony 10 years from now, and it was established and they just needed like worker bodies, I probably wouldn't. I'd want it to be two-way at that point. But yeah, if I have the ability to help create what will become the future of humanity on Mars, if it's one way, sign me up. I'll totally do it. Plus, I do have the perception that eventually it will become two-way, even if it starts out one way. So I wouldn't be too worried about it, although I know it's probably maybe 5 or so years down the line. But what about you, Zach? Would you sign up for a one-way trip?
So first you're saying we need to change some of your paperwork and make you a Martian correspondent or something there. No, I wouldn't go one way. I'd have to know that I could come home. I've always loved the concept of 6 months there, a year on Mars, 6 months back, or whatever, 18 months, or whatever it has to be to get that next kind of shorter rendezvous window. I'm also not opposed to a longer trip there or back. Like short there, time on Mars, maybe longer back. Longer trips, going home always generally feels shorter, I find. So, maybe it is actually a little longer. Based on current family and job and conditions. But if in 10 years that's different, then maybe it is something that I would be able to actually scoop up my entire life and disappear. And I think we're talking about something that, really the only people that have ever had to have that kind of experience are military, that have been deployed. You talk 6 months, 8 months, maybe get to come home a couple days in the middle or something. We haven't really ever had deployments, generally speaking, that we're talking 2, 3, 4, 5 years before for sure there's maybe a come home. And you're talking about a time delay of communication. You're not going to have instant Skype communication like we try to have now for our military. So I'm interested to see, and I'm hoping SpaceX is looking at it, of, acquiring people that have experienced that and help, military members and stuff now with that, because they're going to know how to train these astronauts and prepare them mentally and their families on these longer missions of, you can't just hopefully call dad or hopefully send a message type of thing. So it's interesting. Round trip, I'd go. Moon, I'd go right now on like a Crew Dragon. I think a Crew Dragon flyby would be amazing, but Orion, we got to see how it would go. I don't trust SLS just yet.
For those of you that missed out earlier, and this is also a response to Michael Ullman, he said, what do you expect to hear from Elon Musk's Starship update coming soon, and will we cover it on the launch pad?
Absolutely.
We're going to cover it one way or another. We're trying to work out some fine details now on exactly how we will cover it. So not saying too much, but keep your eyes on the channel. In terms of what we expect to hear, I think it's really just going to be kind of put into words what we have observed over the past year or two, but more specifically, few months, talking about the stacking, because it will be stacked, talking about the chopsticks and how they've been testing it, and they've shown that it has XYZ capability. Really just getting into more the nitty gritty of here's where we are, but then also knowing Elon probably going to press up a little bit against here's what we want to do very soon, even though we don't quite have approval, but we're going to hope that we do and plan as if we do already. Namely speaking, that first orbital flight, which we still hopefully expect to be late spring, early summer, but maybe we'll see more information there. Is there anything that I may be missing out, Zach? What do you hope to see come out of Elon's mouth during that presentation?
I hope we see a Mars timeline. I think it'd be very interesting to see, and maybe it's not by year, but by like T plus successful flight, or L plus successful orbit, and then L plus successful lunar mission. How, 2 years, these are the Mars windows. Our hope is if everything goes well, we're targeting this one for a test, this one for cargo, and then this one for cargo and a fleet. I'd love for us to actually have years that, we can talk about, because at this point, I think we're talking 4 to 6 years before we see a cargo and a fleet. I do not see us sending people into, the next window is the end of this year, if I have it correctly. Originally, we thought maybe they were going to try to do a cargo mission by then, just to prove it, but if you're sending something, you may as well put cargo on it, or at least some supplies, or maybe some rovers or something. But I think at this point we're going to see actually that big fleet of cargo ships in 3 years, crew and cargo in 5. So I'd love for them just to iron out just some more of that detail. Obviously things will change, but I think it starts helping us start to live in an era where we're not only thinking about having people living and working on Earth, but Moon and Mars. I'd love to know their moon plan, because obviously we're hearing Russia and China's plan. We somewhat know NASA's plan with the Artemis program, but SpaceX hasn't said a lot on what they're going to do. They're not part of the Artemis Accords. They have not signed it because they are a private organization. So even though NASA is in the Artemis Accords, SpaceX isn't. So I think that would be a huge statement if they would consider signing it, which I think would help give maybe more of the world some feelings about the Artemis Accord, of if the biggest space company in the world really that is being successful and is going to the moon and Mars is saying we'll agree to this. I think maybe a lot of the other nations that have signed the Outer Space Treaty will. So more details. I think it's all going to be detail based. I think there's going to be a really epic video recap of the last 2 years. A couple days ago was the 2-year anniversary of SN9. So it's been a speedy 2 years. The FAA, as you talked on, we are hearing there might be another delay even of the FAA approval, which is supposed to be coming on the 28th. I know I said the D word, but it's something that, are they stalling their feet for SLS? And I think that's something a lot of people feel is they don't want to see a Starship launch before SLS does, because that would be a major defeat for NASA and the U.S. government, seeing someone private make something in 2 years versus them in 8. So, hopefully that's not how things go, but it's Elon.
I'm actually, yeah, I mean, anything's possible. I'm going to pull a wild card. I don't think this is likely, but if I can think of anything that would kind of blow our minds of what they could announce, maybe Dear Moon. They would talk about who the crew is going to be. As far as I'm aware, I think that they still wanted their launch window to be sometime in 2023. It's now 2022. I don't know what training, if any, would really be required to do a mission like that. Actually, I wouldn't imagine very much. It'd probably be in the style of Inspiration 4, but even less so, because they'd have more people to spread the load. It's a longer mission. But yeah, if I could think of anything that they could do to really blow us away, it would be kind of announcing that crew, or maybe talking even just a little bit more about what's going on with it, because I haven't heard anything at all since Miyazawa did his video kind of welcoming everybody to apply. And then before that, it was the actual announcement of the mission itself.
That's actually really smart. I hadn't thought about Deer Moon because I've talked to some people that were close to it, and the crew is selected. The crew's been known for about 4 months now, for sure, and finalized. And that the crew has already met with MZ and beginning some of the training prerequisite type of stuff. Most of it, like Inspiration 4, will happen, closer to the mission once they actually know what Starship is like. We don't have a Starship simulator, so we can't start training people until we actually know how Starship flies. But I think that's actually would be a great call. It'd be an amazing platform to do it. Of here's your Deer Moon crew, and have them walk out in SpaceX spacesuits. Want to break the internet? That would be something that I think the world would. Yeah, that's a really great call. I hadn't thought of the Deer Moon crew.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's likely. I think Starship.
Soon.
I think if
it has
anything,
to be soon.
It doesn't really, if you think about it. So Inspiration 4 was announced like March, and then they launched in September. I know it's a little bit different because this would be a new vehicle and there would be more people involved, but realistically, they don't have to announce it right now. I just think it'd be really cool if they did.
Do you think they could keep it a secret that long, though? Do you think with these people starting to do their mass training that people wouldn't catch on of... people have to be obviously in tune with everything, but knowing people that are possibly going, that it wouldn't slip?
So the Axiom 1 crew was training since August. Now, Deer Moon is going to be more taking a shot in the dark, because I can't say anything officially, high-level celebrity to a certain degree. So it's not going to be the same type of people. And like you said, yeah, there's going to be more. It's hard to keep everything like perfectly in place so that nobody's aware of anything. I think, though, it's totally possible that they were chosen months ago and have begun training, at least to some degree, and that's just flown under the radar. And if they continue to do so, I think it's actually, they could pull it off. So I don't know for how much longer. Like once you start to cross the year point, I'm sure somebody will catch on to, oh, look, this group of people happens to always kind of be in this same area at the same time, and their schedules look a little funky. But I think it's very possible right now that they have begun training a while ago, and none of us were the wiser.
That's fair. On the Starship topic, and you don't even know I'm going to do this, I'm doing a non-sponsored call-out of a really awesome game that relates to Starship and stacking and stuff that's going to relate to the update. But you guys should check it out. I picked one up, Starship Shuffle. If you haven't heard of this, next time we're doing a TLP meetup or something, I'm going to bring it, and we'll play it. It's a card game, so if you like card games, it's great. And you are literally going through the entire construction process of the Starship program, where you have to go through, different scenarios. You got your robots. Some of the cards have your favorite space YouTubers. I'm not in it. We can fix that Starship Shuffle for the second one. But there's a lot of stuff, and it's really actually quite fascinating, the process. I love that it's an easy way to introduce new people into the topic of Starship because it's a board game, or a card game. I can see you having friends over that don't really know space. If you've ever gone to a board game cafe, you grab a random game off the shelf and you have to learn it, and it's a great little option to do that if you guys want to kind of be outreach. I think there's still a lot of people. We see it every week in our Discord that there are people saying, oh, I didn't know Artemis existed. I didn't know Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy. This is a really easy way to blow people's minds, and it's not too expensive. So check it out. Not sponsored, but something cool to do. But I happen to have two, which means I've got an extra that we need to do a giveaway on. We're not going to do it tonight. We're going to save it for sometime during next week with the update. So you're going to want to make sure you're watching live, because that's the only way you're going to be able to win it. So stay tuned for that, and we'll we'll send this your way, and I don't know if you want us to sign it, we can sign it. I don't know, but we'll get that onto you. But slight detour, but I've been playing with it here by myself in my basement, and it's a really great game. So wanted to give a call out there because I believe it's from a couple Canadians and Americans worked on it. It's great. It's neat seeing people like us bringing something like this to market, that there's going to be people picking it up that have absolutely no clue about space, but they're like, ooh, Starship Shuffle, what's that? So check it out. I think it's starshipshuffle.com. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never heard of it, so I'll have to check it out myself, I guess. So. And I think if we do end up doing that signature thing, this will be the first time I have ever like signed anything to give away. That's
so it'd have to go from me to you to then the winner.
Well, it depends on maybe how the next week or so plays
We'll have to
out.
see how the next week goes. Ting.
Yeah.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. We can't say nothing. Going on for the last few questions we got in here. Michael's asking, if I were to go see a Falcon 9 launch at Vandenberg, is there a recommended hotel or vantage point that is recommended? Vandenberg's a hard one because it's such a large Space Force base, not a station. And it's mountainous. So it is very hilly. There is really anywhere north or south of it, if you can get on the beach on the coastline, you're going to see it. Kennedy is going to be your better option if you want to be close to a Falcon 9 launch, especially if you can line it up with a Falcon 9 that's launching when the Kennedy Space Center is open. If it's not a crewed launch or a special launch, then like a regular Starlink, you can go get your normal pass for Kennedy and then get onto a bus to the Apollo 5 Center, which will take you to where we live covered Inspiration 4, which is about 3 miles away from the pad. You're right next to the VAB. It's a really neat place to watch a launch, knowing that you're that close to like where everything happens. They call it the Feel the Burn. It's not, if you buy the Feel the Burn package, that's extra, but that's for like crew missions. But if it's a regular everyday Starlink and it's during operational hours, you can go. They put SpaceX up on the feed, so you still see that. You get to experience the time delay of them streaming the YouTube channel while watching the rocket launch in front of you. And sometimes there's astronauts and stuff there hanging out, also doing kind of a mini pre-show and stuff. So that's definitely the best option. If you're going to Kennedy and you can afford it, I recommend just buying the annual pass. If you go 2 days, it pays for itself. If you go 1 day with some friends or family, buy the annual pass. You then get free online. Your parking is paid for, and if you buy like lunch for you and a person and a little bit of merch, the 10% discount balances out the cost of just buying the pass, and you're helping support Kennedy. It is really funded off of its tickets and stuff, so it's a good way of doing that. And if you happen to be able to go back in the next year, you're all set to go. So yeah, Vandenberg's a harder one because it's not meant to be a public launch site. It was never designed to be that.
Yeah, I think there was Brian, who was in our Inspiration 4 unofficial group, had taken a few photos of the banner that we have with all of our names and photos on it. He was fairly close. I don't know if like launch time you can get to where he was, but I think it was just on the side of the road somewhere. There's a fence where you're not allowed to go past, but you can kind of just hang out off to the side of that fence. So maybe, yeah, look into that. That's the only thing that I know about Vandenberg, truthfully, though. Most of it's closer to Florida or Texas.
Yeah, that's Florida and Texas are the place you can get up and almost touch it in many ways. Astronomer, did you ever know that there will be a colonization on Mars or an exoplanet like Alpha Centauri system? That's the dream.
It'll be a while before we get to Alpha Centauri.
I'm there in my dreams. It's okay.
Yeah, I think it's like 4.5 light years away, something like that. So if we can even get to 1% of the speed of light, which would be pretty incredible, it's gonna take a while. We'll need like generation ships and something like that. And we're pretty sure, I think there's 2 or 3 exoplanets that are within the Goldilocks zone, specifically around Alpha Centauri. I don't know what concentration they're on Alpha Centauri A or B or kind of where they lie, but we're talking at the very least hundreds, if not 1,000 years into the future before that happens, probably.
That's so long.
I
Yeah.
know.
We're still stuck in our solar system, unfortunately. We're still a barely type 1 civilization, so we're working on
Actually,
it.
I don't even think we're type
Aren't
1.
we?
We're
Aren't
we're
we
type
type 1?
No. No, we're type like 0.8 or 0.7 something.
Okay, we're getting there.
Because type 1 is mastery of all the different energy sources on the planet.
Oh yeah, we're not there.
Um, yeah, we're not there yet,
We're
but
almost
we're
there.
making we're making some progress.
Yeah, we can use, I would say, all the energy on the planet. The storing part we're not very good at yet.
We're not good at storing, and we're not quite there with the efficiency of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, of course, some of that is just like physically impossible. We're never gonna get an engine that has like 95% efficiency, but
So do you think
we're
type
not
2
we're
or
not quite
type
there
3
yet.
to go to Alpha Centauri?
To go to Alpha Centauri, type 2, because type 2 is mastery over all the energy within the solar system.
Okay.
And if we can, or is it just the star? I don't know how it's worded
Planetary
exactly,
system.
but for type 2?
Type 1 is
So then what
planet,
is,
type 2 is planetary, type 3 is galaxy.
so by planetary system, they mean solar system then, right?
I would assume
Because that's a weird way of wording it. If type 1 is planet and then 2 is
planetary.
planetary.
Yeah, I would assume they mean solar system.
Okay,
And
yeah,
I
because
think they
that
say it
would,
that way because technically the solar system is the name of our planetary system in a way.
what's where like the Earth solar system is.
Yeah. Like I was
I
hearing
would
that
refer to us as soul.
yeah, I guess, but I guess some people are saying like you wouldn't call like the Alpha Centauri system a solar, like it's a solar system but it's not the solar system. So it's like Starship. You got Starship or you've got Starship with all of it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. But yeah, I think by the time, assuming that we do ever get to full like type 2, we can make it to other galaxies. It'll still galaxies, other solar systems. It'll still take a while. But yeah, I mean theoretically, we had talked about, I think in maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, Project Starshot, where I said that we're not going to be sending people to Alpha Centauri for hundreds or 1,000 years, but realistically, we can take a very small, lightweight satellite, build 1,000 of them, put a giant solar sail, and then get there within the next 50 years. We can get there within the next 25 if we really wanted to, because I think the numbers crunched out such that we could get to something like 40% the speed of light. I don't know if I'm really extrapolating. I'll have to brush up on it, but it was some like ridiculous number, and that required nothing other than just the solar radiation coming off of the sun. So I think it is feasible. I don't know about likely, but
I hope it's
feasible
likely.
within,
That'd be
yeah, well, I mean
amazing.
specifically within our lifetimes, to be like, what if we got photos of Alpha Centauri, of like one of its planetary bodies? Like that would be crazy.
That'd
Something like
be
that. I think it's
that would
possible.
that would change the direction of a lot of stuff. Just like I think James Webb is going to. James Webb's going to give us a lot of things to think about, and I think if we the fact that we can do it, that's the interesting part about what you were saying. Is like we know how to do it. We just don't we're not sure on the number exactly, but we know how to do it. Then let's do it. If we spent $10 billion on James Webb, we're planning LaVoir A and B, which are going to be probably 10 to 20 billion each. Why don't we save a couple billion? Let's go to Alpha Centauri with a CubeSat with a GoPro or something on it. Like, I'm wondering how the time delay would be. How long would it take to get the data from there back?
It'd be about 4.5 years.
Ooh, that's an old photo. But
Yeah, well, when you're talking about the lifespan of a planet, that's nothing.
true. And talking about 4.5 years, perfect segue. Folded Eagle has a question. Any idea what launch vehicle Boeing Starliner will use after Atlas? Sorry for all the questions. Y'all are great. Never be sorry. We're here to ask questions. Starliner is expected to use Vulcan, is it not? Yes.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Yeah,
I think everything is going to slowly transition over to Vulcan.
yeah. Anything Delta 4 Heavy and Atlas 5, any variant, is all going to Vulcan to bring it all into just one system. So that's what it'll eventually be on, which means if Starliner doesn't hurry it up and use the last few Atlas Vs that are left, they're going to have to wait till Vulcan is human rated by NASA, which could mean Starliner could be ready, but Vulcan's not, and that all leaves it down to our favorite friend. I don't think that went out on the stream. That's disappointing.
Jeff who?
Yeah, I'm not seeing what you're putting down,
go.
Zach.
There we go. It said Jeff who. I think it went out. I don't know. Let me know if you heard it. Try to do it once on stream. No, didn't work. That's okay. Kevin Wise is asking, we know the Lunar Gateway is going to our moon. Are there plans for a satellite like it they are planning to put around Mars? I don't believe so yet.
Yeah, I don't think so. The moon is kind of the perfect launching pad to the rest of the solar system, and assuming that you can get off of Mars, which actually is much easier than getting off of Earth because there's a lot less gravity. Making it to the moon isn't that hard. You don't have to do any crazy stunts. If you're going further out into the solar system, like let's say you want to, I don't know, launch something and land it on Pluto, and then you want to get from Pluto back to the moon, it may be a little bit more difficult. You can use gravity assists that way too, so you still might not need it. But as far as we're aware, Lunar Gateway is kind of all that they're planning.
Richie, now that VTOL is coming mainstream, do you think we could incorporate that technology like Ingenuity could be used to explore Mars with astronauts? Thoughts?
I don't think it'd be worth it. Like, first of all, you have to create the fuel type on Mars, whereas on Earth you can kind of just like pipe it in from anywhere. So the capital cost of doing that is going to be higher. Granted, you can use less fuel because less atmosphere and less gravity, but I don't know if, like, yeah, I don't know. I foresee, like, if we were to do anything, it would just be kind of like a little Mars buggy rover, or we could see, like, NASA has some pretty cool concept on the moon that they're not doing these little dinky like go-kart type things anymore. They're gonna have these like serious kind of like mini tanks, and they want to do the same thing for Mars. I think that's really what they're gonna lean into. It's going to be a lot cheaper and a lot safer. Imagine if we finally get somebody over to Mars and then they crash in a VTOL. Like, that would suck. So of course you can always crash in your mini tank, but I mean the odds of you getting physically hurt, a lot less.
No, that's an interesting one. Corporal Day Walker's asking, Jeff who boxers?
We have
Update.
so many requests for underwear.
So many requests for underwear. Never would have expected that. I will tell you, a sample has been ordered. So stay tuned on the Discord for that. They've already been claimed by somebody, and it's not me. But a sample is coming in the future.
It's not me either, by the way.
Just to clarify, who's not wearing the Jeff Who boxers. But that is your guys' request. It's a great call out, though. If you guys want to take a moment, you can head on over to etsy.com/shop/the Launchpad shop. That helps us out with just you guys taking a look and picking up some of your favorite space gear. I've got the Raptor one on today, but you guys can pick it up there. If you load it on your screen, it's going to obviously say your currency. Mine's showing Canada because I am in Canada. But you can pick it up. Obviously, with the Starship update, you're going to want to order your Starship Orbital launch shirt, or maybe your Starbase Balls shirt. But you can check that out and get ready for Crew 4 launch and Crew 3's return. So definitely check it out. Lots of different things that you can get ready for as we speed up into a very busy launch season here. And if you want to pick up just some generic TLP stuff as well, that is super awesome and appreciated as well. So lots of things. Check it out. And we do ship pretty much everywhere in the world. So don't worry about if you're not in Canada or the U.S. Marcus, can we get...
Oh, go for it. No, I'll let you go. Let's go.
Marcus wants better modeling photos. Is that an offer, Marcus? We'll wait and see. We can make that happen. Kevin, one more question and then I gotta go. Thanks for answering my questions. Why is the orbit of the Lunar Gateway more like an egg than a circle? That is a good question. I only saw that recently. Any ideas?
I don't know the answer to that. Eggs are cool.
Eggs are, yeah, I mean, who doesn't love a good egg? I think it has to do partly with what they're going to do with Orion, with doing just like an elliptical kind of orbit, that it'll get to the moon and then it'll stabilize into an elliptical rather than getting to the moon, getting captured, and then having to burn to like shrink its orbit really tight. They'd rather just stay in a bigger elliptical because it's going to be easier to go back home. So the Lunar Gateway is going to be the same for that. So we'll see what happens. And apparently Richie has now volunteered to be a model as well. So this is fantastic. And Corporal Daywalker is offering to take the photos. So next TLP meetup in Florida, for those interested, we're going to do a photo shoot at Kennedy Space Center. That's what we're going to do. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for the questions we've got in this week. Final thoughts for episode 004.
Actually, yes. So this isn't a question, and I didn't have this as a story, but I do want to mention it while we still have some viewers. And Zach, I don't know if you've seen this too. Rocket Factory is letting you name their future rocket engine.
How did we miss that?
Yeah. It's been a busy week. It's always a busy week. But yeah, if you go to rfa.space/name-our-engine before February 20th, you can name a rocket engine. And it's pretty simple. They ask for what you want it to be named. They ask for your name and then some information like for social media. If they're going to reach out to you, they said whoever they decide is the winner, which I think is also done through public voting. That's going to start on February 28th on Twitter and LinkedIn. Whoever does win is going to, of course, have it named after them, but then they also get like a special care package with, they said, some engine hardware. Unsure exactly what that means. Sounds very cool, though. So if any of you want to swing on by, throw your hat in the ring and see if maybe you can get an actual rocket engine named after something of your choosing, go ahead and give it a shot. And they are asking, too, for other engine names, if not the first stage engine, maybe a second or third stage. Toss that in there, too. I don't know what they're going to be doing for that. And everything is going to be decided on March 3rd.
Wow.
So we'll maybe keep you a little bit updated as it gets closer to that point on what that is, and maybe if anybody in our community happened to win. So if you do throw a name in the ring, let us know. And if any of you win, let us know.
Yeah, we'll bring you onto the podcast and talk about it. I've got the perfect name. Flamey McFlameface.
Flamey McFlameface. That's, I think a lot of people have been going down that avenue. So very original.
You gotta do it. You gotta do it.
Have you already submitted a name yet?
No.
Because I have.
Oh, you have. All right, now are you going to release it or are you going to keep it a secret?
No, I'll tell you. It's truly, I feel, best name for anything, but also rocket engine. Ian.
You did not call it Ian.
Yes, I did. It's not going to win, but if it wins, we're going to say lighting up Ian or something akin to that. I don't know.
Stand by for Ian ignition, main engine Ian, and liftoff of the Ian rocket.
Yeah, look at all three of those Ians gimbaling. Don't they look great?
Ooh, I feel
Ian
like
at full throttle.
Oh, these could end up very interesting sound bites to use in a soundboard. But no, that'd be. I got to think of something. I almost want to do like my family name, but I'm not sure if that would work. But we'd have to wait. I have to figure out something. We got some time. You've got until February 20th, so you got about 2 and a bit weeks to be able to submit that. I'm excited that they're doing it public polling, and that it's not only on Twitter. So the fact that it's going to be on LinkedIn as well gives just an open up to a little bit more of a population. And we'll see how that goes from there. I see Trash Munster asking when's the meetup at Kennedy. Soonish. Next time We're still waiting for dates, but most likely it'll be something to do around with the launch of SLS or the first Falcon Heavy. We're still waiting for dates on both of those, but those are 2 missions for sure that I would like to be back down at Kennedy for, and we'll go from there. But we'll definitely do a meetup down there. Probably do a meetup at Starbase maybe before that. So make sure you stay tuned for that. That'll go out on our Discord first, and then some of it will go out on Twitter as well. We might do a members one only and then open it up for part of it. But lots of ideas of what we can do for our meetups, because we definitely want to meet this really amazing community and hopefully do international meetups once it's a little easier to travel around the world and not have to quarantine places. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but that about, like you said earlier, sorry, I was the one that derailed it now. That about wraps it up. Thank you guys for all of the questions. I'll do one more, and you don't have to put this on the screen, don't worry. Etsy.com/shop/thelaunchpad. It is a great place to buy merch, and more specifically with the upcoming Starship announcement, maybe you can grab some cool Starship shirts. There's always new James Webb things that we talk about. We still have James Webb shirts. There's so many cool things on there, and the go-getter he is, Zach actually is pulling it back up on the screen. So
super easy.
But there is that. Yeah, there is a shop that was just dropped in the chat. Perfect, Marcus Sieg did before even I could. Discord, we also have a Discord. We typically hang out after the shows and talk and answer any additional questions you have, just to kind of say hi and meet you guys too. But then also, if you come around at any point in the day, you will likely find Zach, if anybody, hanging out in the live comms. But I drop by every now and then, and if you reach out to us or any of the mods, we're always there for friendly conversation. We like to keep a community, so drop on by, leave a like on this video. That helps. We have now officially added ourselves to Apple Podcasts. So if any of you guys are hearing this as a replay, but think to yourselves, wow, I want to hear more of this, but on the go, and I don't have YouTube Premium, that will be your premier place. We're working on getting it to Google Podcasts, and we're already on Spotify as well. So look us up, drive some traction, because last time I looked this up, we're not easily findable. So if you do need that link too, you can reach out and we'll give it to you. But I assure you we are there. So thank you guys for all of the love and all of the support. Any final words on your end, Zach?
If you're listening to the podcast and you're wondering about all the stuff we reference, that's like, look at the blue dot or look at the red dot, and don't know what you're talking about, youtube.com/thelaunchpad. That's where you can watch the video version of the podcast as well. And if you guys are listening on the podcast or watching the replay here on YouTube, drop in the comments, replay all the way to the end. We love seeing it. I know we saw a few last week, and in the future we'll do some shout outs to those people watching the replays as well. But I think that's going to do it for episode 004 of the Launch Pod. We'll be back here maybe next week. Stay tuned. We're not going to pre-schedule next week's stream until we know a little more, but next week's schedule got entirely blown up by Elon about 4 hours ago, so stay tuned for that. Of course, we'll cover the launches next week as we do, and we will see you next time. If you guys have questions or topics or stories throughout the week that come in that you think we should have on the next episode of the Launch Pod, you can submit it 2 different places, thelaunchpadofficial.com. Click on Launch Pod, there's some links there, or join the Discord. There's a Launch Pod section. You can send in a news tip or a question and we will answer it there. But for now, this is Zac and Ian signing off. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Don't forget to click the like button. subscribe. Bye-bye now.